Okay, I think it's time to get started. You ready, Kendall?
Let's do it.
All right, cool. Welcome, everyone. Like I said, this will be recorded. You can talk to us in the chat, and if you have any questions, toss it in the Q&A. My name is Nat McDonald. I'm the Director of Configurators at TestFit. This is Matt Kendall. We both work on the product team. I work to identify customer needs and ultimately get those into the TestFit product, whether that's our desktop product or our web product. We're constantly talking to customers, seeing how we can improve the experience for them. Kendall, you want to give a little intro?
Yeah, hey everybody, Matthew Kendall. Same kind of what Matt's saying, we're here to kind of improve the experience of TestFit itself. My background, I have 5 years of architectural design experience, and I've been with TestFit for about 4 years.
Cool. So what we're going to talk about today, first, for the people that are brand new here, have no idea what TestFit is, we'll talk about what it is, how it can help you in your real estate development or architectural companies, along with many others. We will go through some of the things we've built in the past quarter to make sure that you've seen it and you know it's in the product. We'll have a Q&A, and at the very end, we'll talk about the upcoming features. We have some very, very exciting things, some big next generation features that I think everyone will be able to utilize. So please stick around until the end. We're very excited to tell you all about that. So what is TestFit? TestFit is a real estate feasibility software. We automate the design of multifamily apartment buildings, garden apartments, single family, industrial, retail, whatever you have that you want to put on a piece of land, we'll automatically design for you in TestFit. We create site plans, we validate pro formas, we allow multiple iterations. So as you can see in this GIF, it's really easy to move things around. It's 100% real time and very easy to create multiple options. And lastly, we allow you to create quantity takeoffs so then you can get to costing out your project and really figuring out if it pencils very, very quickly. So let's get right into it. So the desktop updates that we have are really exciting. We wanted to bring in more users to TestFit. We recognize that sometimes only one person in a firm would really latch onto it and bring it into their workflow. And we really wanted to get that to everyone within a company. And the way we did that was with Urban Planner. We'll demo all of this. I'll just kind of talk over it real quick. We wanted to bring more data into TestFit. We wanted to make it more flexible with our garden configurator. And we wanted to build on the algorithms that we've already built. Parking was one of I think it was the second configurator that we built after high density. And it's always been something that people want to use more and more of. So in the past few months, we've been working really hard on improving that. So Kendall, do you want to open up TestFit and we can start showing these?
Yeah.
Cool. And let me also let's see, I'm no longer sharing. Perfect. Okay.
Awesome. Cool. So I'm going to show off Urban Planner. Urban Planner is our kind of new free tool that we have. It allows you to utilize our massing tools as well as our roads tools, which you can kind of see here. And I'll kind of walk you through kind of some of the features that it has and what you can kind of do with it. For this kind of example, we're going to go through a multifamily project, looking at a couple of different ways that we can use Urban Planner to achieve a density study, and we'll still be getting all of this data that we have down here in the bottom in real time.
And real quick, before you get into it, Kendall, I want to mention Urban Planner is completely free for anyone, no matter if you're a student, a real estate developer, architect. You do not have to pay for Urban Planner. You don't even have to talk to us if you don't want. You can download it from our website and get it going. So it doesn't have all the really cool detailed features of our configurators, but it really is a solid massing tool that pretty much anyone in industry can use. So with that, Kendall, go ahead, go for it.
Cool. So I've already kind of designed some of these roads. These roads are ones that you'll be able to use and kind of draw on, but we'll kind of start to kind of get into what exactly we can do inside of Urban Planner. So once we've created this kind of road network that I'm showing here, I can select inside of this site, and what you'll have available for you inside of Urban Planner would be just our basic massing tools. So I'm going to start with this basic shape that we have right now. So what we can see right now is I've just placed a retail space that's filling up this entire site. We can quickly select this space over here in our nav tree. Here we go. Then what we can do is we can start to change the type of space that we're working with. So since we're going to be looking at this as a kind of a mixed use, urban-esque style project, I'm going to change this to our low detail parking. So now what we're going to see is we have a 1-story garage. We're getting some stall counts from that. And then the way that we figure out these stall counts for this kind of basic massing is going to be the stall average that we have set over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click over here in 3D and I can start to drag this up and down. We can see as we do that, these stall counts are going to be starting to change for us. So from here, what I'm going to do, so since we just have a basic kind of parking garage that we're seeing, I'm going to select the site. I'm going to add a space. And let's say we wanted to add some retail along this kind of south and this side over here as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and click and I'm going to draw. What I'm drawing right now is the basic shape that we want that retail to take up. Whenever I finish that selection, you can see that retail shape has been placed there. That retail shape itself, what we'll notice as well is as we slide this around, our parking's changing and we're also getting some additional load demand down here as well as stalls required for the retail that we're seeing. So if we need to, I can kind of slide this in this corner. And then now we're starting to see if I were to pop back in 3D, we have this ground floor shown as retail, which we can make taller as needed. So I'll make that 2 levels tall. And then we have the parking garage that's kind of sitting, kind of nested next to it, and then also on top of it, since we're going to that 3-story area. So down here on the bottom, we're starting to see some of this populate with some numbers. You can also go to our expanded tabulations and see additional information on top of that. What I'm now going to do is, now that we have the kind of the base setup, we have the garage, we have the retail, I'm going to start to add an additional space over here. So we'll just select our site again. We'll add a space. And I'm just going to put kind of a small lobby over here in this corner. Whenever we're drawing these spaces, so right now we have this called a retail space. I'm going to change this over to a condition space for now, and I'm just going to label it as a lobby for us. So now what that's done is you can see, since this space has now cut these into 2 separate areas, we have 2 different areas for each of these retails. And again, we can see over here in the corner, I'll make that lobby a 2-story space by just simply grabbing the top of that and dragging it up. So now we're getting a little bit more detail with this mixed use project. Now what we'll do is we have an option to duplicate these spaces. This can be beneficial if we're starting to stack these spaces like we're doing right now. So I'm going to take this garage, I'm going to duplicate it above, and now we can see this 5-story garage that I've added on top of our 3-story garage. I'm going to change it over to multifamily. So now that we've changed that type, as you can see, we have quite a bit of types over here from office, ponds, parks, hotel. These will all be different styles of spaces that we have on here. So right now we're seeing this kind of large area, just like what we were looking with the parking garage itself. We can set what that unit average is. So I can change this to be up or down, and we'll get that reflected in our tabulations down here on the bottom. So right now we're just looking at a really large mass. There's no kind of articulation to it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on that layer and it's going to take me up to that multifamily space. Right now what we have is, this is what we call a fill shape. A fill shape itself, what that does for us is it fills out that whole site. So as I make changes, let's just say to this road over here, that's starting to keep that size of the site that we have. And I'm just going to undo this real quick, but it's actually letting it, change the shape of there from that portion. What I'm going to do is, the way that we're going to draw this courtyard is I'm just going to define it as a void space. A void space inside of TestFit, what that does for us, and I'll just go ahead and kind of draw this. I'm going to draw it nice and square. Right now, we still have it kind of classified as a retail space, but I'm going to select this and turn that into a void. So right now, what we've done is we've made that a void space. If I were to stretch that void space up like I've done right now, we've now created that courtyard from that void space itself. Another benefit of this one is that void space, we retain that information. So if I wanted to, I could drag that closer to this side, kind of even it up on either of these sides. And as needed, I can duplicate that in place and I could drag that over here to this other side. So you can see pretty quickly we were able to define a garage, apply a couple spaces to that, one being some retail, a lobby space, and now we're starting to show some of these kind of courtyards that we have over here. And again, we're kind of retaining that data of that void space. It's not being removed like you're used to, like you're familiar with seeing with like a Boolean-esque tool. So to go a bit farther, we're just looking at really high level tabulations right now, 384 units. We're at a 1.6 parking ratio with our kind of low detail garage. We can also see that parking that's required for this retail space. For the retail space as well, right now it's showing up as two separate levels. We have an option if we want to merge those levels. And as I do that, we'll see our retail load change. The net and gross of it will change as well, because now we're actually getting a true double height space. So with the space tool itself, you are able to make multi-story spaces that then kind of tabulate correctly. And so now we can kind of see there was a line here before, but it's not showing up anymore because we've actually made that a double height space. Go ahead and hit save. So if we wanted to get into some more detail, because right now this is just a detailed a massing option. Let's say I wanted to start to add some verticals or cores that we wanted to coordinate going through this building itself. This is just going to be another space that we have as well. So I'm going to click add a space, and I'm just going to draw, let's do a 20 by 20 space. As we're defining this shape, we can type in the dimensions we want to, so you can be very specific with the size of the shape that you're drawing. And I'm going to change this over to a condition space. I'm going to call this my core. And then now what we're going to do is with that core that we've just placed, here we go. Instead of it being on level 4, I'm going to drop it down to level 1 over here in the tabs. And I'm going to make that a much taller space as well. So now what we can see is that space is actually going up and down through the massing itself. And we can start to see this being reflected in the plan that we have. And also, if we needed to, that can be kind of quickly adjusted and changed. As I'm pushing and pulling this core dimension, you can start to see over here that it is updating one, the unit count, but also the area that we have allocated for this multifamily space itself. So what we're going to do is I'll go down to the lower floors. We can start to see it's kind of pathing its way all the way down. This can be a move and adjusted. And again, we're still seeing those kind of areas being taken out from those separate pieces. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to right click and I'm going to duplicate that core. What that does for us is now I can actually just start duplicating this and placing it around where I think that I would have my cores. And this is all still a manual process because we're just kind of moving and identifying these spaces. But you can see as I do this, we're getting the updates for our units, the parking counts. I'm going to place one more kind of over here at the end. And so you can see we kind of quickly have gone in. We've placed a few kind of inside corner cores over here. And you can see how this is all kind of pathing all the way down through this garage. When I click on the expanded tabulations down here on the bottom, we can start to get all of this information. So right now we can see the core area is taking up a total of 25,000 square feet. That's for all 6 core that we've identified. That's going throughout all of the levels. We can also start to look at the more information, such as how much retail we're showing. It's about 46,000 square feet between the 2 of these that are being shown. Lobby area is showing up as well, and the multifamily area that we're showing here. The other kind of pieces that we have for the extended or the expanded tabulations is we can also start to get some facade area takeoffs. So right now, just kind of looking at this building, I can see that we have about 162,000 square feet of external face. And that would be kind of the garage outside, the kind of courtyards that we're seeing on the inside that were created from this void space, as well as the multifamily component that it's starting to kind of take up over here on that side. Another element that I wanted to show for this massing. So we created this building from just, let me delete some of these, remove those cores for now. We created this multifamily building using these void spaces. And I'm just going to start to remove some of these. Before I actually remove them, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another scheme. Let's say I wanted to look at a second option inside of here. So now we're on scheme 2. What scheme 2 does for us is any changes that I make inside of here. So I'm going to remove my cores. I'm going to remove my voids that we're actually creating our courtyards. And for my multifamily building, instead of it being a fill shape, I'm going to make it a free shape. A free shape, what that lets you do is you can go in and you can define what you want that shape to be. So I'm just going to kind of draw something more or less like this. Now that that shape has been defined, you can see that's the shape that's actually taking up for that building. And that's the new one that we're working with. There's another way that we can define this shape as well. Instead of just drawing it like how I was doing right now, we have something that we call a draw path offset. So let's say I kind of know the general path that I want to take, path being, let's just, think of that as like the hallway that we're looking at. I'll kind of finish it right here. What this does for us is after I've defined this initial path over here, I'll click inside of the circle and I'll set what I want my offset to be. So for this one, we'll be working with, let's say, a 30-foot deep unit, 6-foot hallway, and an additional 30-foot deep unit. So let's type that in. Oh, sorry, be 33 because we're working at the half point. So now what I've done is I've actually defined exactly what I needed for this one. So now we can see we were working with the correct dimensions that we have for the depth of this kind of bar that we have. Again, we're seeing that kind of reflected in 3D, but also what we give you is the ability is once we start to hover around these lines, we can start to push and pull these different elements as needed. So you can still kind of quickly make these different design decisions. We can move this over as needed. And then what we would do is we can start to push and pull this as we want to these different areas on that site. And still we're getting all of this updated in our tabulations as you saw those changing on that bottom portion as we're making these updates to the site itself. So now we have a pretty good site plan for this multifamily model. We're getting kind of a good parking range over here. We can see, with our retail and our multifamily, the stalls required for our multifamily is set over here. Here are the stalls required for our retail. And we can see with a combination of both of those, we're still hitting our parking required. We only need 620 spaces. We're hitting a stalls of 647 spaces with how we have it kind of set up. Just like we did with that other one, we can start to drop those cores in as needed. That's kind of, a quick kind of study that we have for a multifamily project over here. On this area over here on the right, I'm actually going to add an additional site to our project right now. I'm going to draw a site. We'll keep this one nice and square. And this one, we're just going to look at another style of massing. So we'll do the same thing. We'll place a basic site or a basic shape on there. And now what we can see, just like what we were looking at with the other one, we have this basic shape that's been defined here. What we're going to do with this one is instead of it being a multifamily building, let's look at it as an office as an office itself. So now we have this set as an office. I'm going to draw a free shape just because I know maybe the dimensions that I want for my office. And let's do 200 feet. We'll go, let's say 150 feet this direction. There we go. And so we kind of click that last point to kind of finish that extra line over here. So now we're showing this office area. Again, we can drag this in 3D. And then with the office, we're going to start to add some additional components to this site plan as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to site. I'm going to add a space. And this space, instead of it being retail, I'm actually going to change it over to a park. Now that it's a park, we're going to have that park fill the site. One important thing to know about TestFit is the kind of order of this is going to be important with how we're placing things on the site itself. If we notice that there actually isn't a ground floor showing, I'm actually going to drag this park below the office. So think of that as like a background fill that we have for the office itself. So now what we're seeing here is we have our office set on this with kind of a green area being shown. And we'll start to add other parking elements just like we did with the other multifamily site. So I'll click add a space, draw a path offset, and I'm just going to draw right through the front. And we'll make that an offset that would mimic, the depth of parking that we need, the drive aisle that we need, and we'll just kind of go to about right there. And so now, again, this is showing up as a retail space. We can quickly change that over if we needed to a low detail parking. And now we're starting to get those parking counts with the office itself. So with the office, now that we have that placed, I can duplicate it above. We can start to manipulate these spaces as we continue to go up. And as well as, let's say we wanted to duplicate one of these, and instead of it being an office, we can change that office back over to a void space. Now this void space itself, I can drag this all the way down to the ground floor, and we can see it start to cut into that. So we can really get into how we're shaping or developing this building. We can start to change other elements. Maybe this ground floor isn't office. We're showing that kind of surface style parking over here. But as needed, I could change this over to a low detail parking. And now we're getting this idea of stacking the building with a garage. We're working with these void spaces to start to kind of carve out a larger massing as needed. And this can even be kind of reduced down if we wanted to kind of create a hole or kind of an inset within that area itself. The roads tool that we kind of started with over here, just to kind of explain a little bit what was shown before we kind of started this one. I'm actually going to call site A over here, multifamily. We'll call this our office site. And we'll minimize these just to show that. Hit save. So the roads that we're seeing over here, this is from our roads tool. Our roads tool, what it lets you do is you can select a road over here. If I wanted to, I could start drawing additional roads. I've left this one disconnected right now on purpose because what this does for us is once we create this closed road loop, which is what we're seeing now, you can see that this side over here is starting to populate with some acreage showing up. If I were to divide that with these two, now we're seeing two separate sites. That allows us to start to create additional sites. You can see how we can start to look at larger urban plans and then apply different styles of buildings or functions in each of those sites themselves. The roads tool as well, what we allow you to do is right now, these are our default roads that we have. If I were to click on this roads editor, now what we're looking at is the road editor itself. And within here, what we can do is, let's say I drew a couple lanes earlier. I drew streets and I drew some lanes. Let's say if I were to left click on this lane, what this is showing us is this is actually the makeup of this road section. We can kind of see how it's being mimicked over here on that left. We're seeing a sidewalk, a buffer, which will be the green space, two drives, a buffer, and an additional sidewalk. Let's say I wanted to add some, surface parking to go along with this plan that we're working on. This lower area, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an additional feature. Right now, it just defaults to a drive. I can left click and I can drag that up and down. So I'm going to place it over here on the north side of this drive. And instead of it being a drive, I'm going to change that over to parking. So now we can see that this new road section that we've created, I've added the parking on here. And you also have the ability to change the angle, change the size of that as needed, and I'll make it 12 feet wide, give it a little bit more room. And then when I go back over here, we now have that own new database with that new lane. Instead of calling it lane, I'm going to just call this parking, just so we can recognize that when we start to make adjustments. And I'll go out over here. Now what we can see is any lane that I've drawn, I've updated that profile and it's showing the parking. We also give you the ability to right click, change type. I could turn that back into my street. My street doesn't have any of the parking associated with it. So I'll do that for a couple of these. Street. Give me just a second. We'll update all of these. Street. There we go. And so now we can see we have that kind of parking shown over here. Once that parking is placed, you can mirror it as needed. So we can change the side that we have on there. Or if we wanted to, we could always go into the editor and kind of modify it a bit more. So these would be kind of the main features that we have for our urban planner that we have. We give you the ability to create and define these roads, create those custom road sections, and then go in and start making these kind of massing adjustments as needed when you're working through your project.
Yeah, Kendall, that was great. One of the questions I saw in the chat was, can we make curved streets? And yes, we can. So we can, you can just grab one of those and pull it, and that will curve it as needed.
Yeah, so as I click and I drag this, you can see it's kind of paying attention where my mouse is. If I click inside of this street and I start to move my mouse over, you can see how that's starting to kind of pull that curve, kind of like gravitates towards that mouse pull itself. Once these have been kind of adjusted, you're seeing that site acreage inside as well change. And also, let's say if you curved it too much, you can always right click and straighten that back up and then change it as needed. Yeah, great point. Any other questions that we have coming into chat for the urban planner?
Yep, we can. Thomas also asked, can we export to Revit or AutoCAD? Yes, we can export to both of those. In Revit, we can export specific geometry and families as well. So that is possible.
Yeah, and then also since exports were mentioned, we can also export this out into SketchUp as needed. What's nice is whenever we have different floors that are of the same shape, let's say this multifamily area, these 5 floors are going to come into SketchUp as a component itself. So just editing one of those floors would edit all of them as needed. So you can kind of quickly, take this a bit farther inside of SketchUp as needed, because you can, use the powerful component of the components themselves to kind of modify these massings and continue working on them as you'd like.
Yeah. Someone in the chat, I think Andy, asked about, are you pulling zoning data based on the local municipality data? And that is a great question, Andy, because that's what we're going to talk about next. So we found a great data provider called Zonomics that provides local zoning data for municipalities. Obviously, zoning is so important in the development process because it can make or break a site. You generally don't want to have to wait for someone else to do zoning research for you. So you're sometimes left digging through some nasty PDF that a municipality created, 15 years ago or something. So that's why we created this zoning data. We provide you with a zoning map of your area, as well as automatically setting zoning controls on a site. The zoning data is available as an add-on purchase for existing customers or prospects. Feel free to reach out to your account manager or sales exec, and they can work with you on pricing. So Kendall, you want to show it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just going to go ahead and start to define another site over here. And this, we're going to show it as kind of our garden product that we have. Give it a bit more room so we can start to fit some of these kind of garden pieces on here. And we'll show kind of what our zoning does for us and how we can kind of quickly utilize that to make design decisions in here, because we are getting that data that we're pulling for it. So over here on this north site, I'm going to call this my garden site, just so we can start to kind of, clean this up a bit. Right now, what we're seeing as well is our parcels. Parcels isn't included in the urban planner that we have, but with the other one, you can start to see this is being shown right here. So now what we're going to do is over here on the right, this is where we have our different map data layers. So I'm going to turn off our parcels and I'm going to enable our zoning map. Give it a second to populate. So now what we're seeing is as I move my mouse around, we'll kind of keep an eye over here on this right side. Wherever I'm hovering, we're going to start to see what that zoning information or what that zoning zone is. It's a lot of zones. So we can see where we are right now. We're in a TOD. Great. If I hover over to the left, there's quite a bit of TOD zones over here. And let's say I were to select back onto my garden site, we're going to notice there's a couple additional kind of setback pieces that we have. We can now start to define front, side, and rear setbacks for each of the sites. If I were to minimize this and expand our zoning tab, we can actually see that this is the zoning that's being shown within this site. If I were to stretch this site just a bit farther, now that I'm covering two separate zoning sites, we'll show you zoning for both of those as needed. So if your site's spanning between multiple zoning areas, we'll start to show that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand this zoning area down here. And these are going to be, we have about 13 default zoning parameters that we're looking for. And we can start to see what we're being shown over here. For this site, being that it was rezoned as a TOD, it looks like we actually only have a minimum rear yard of 5, a side yard of 5, and then I see a front yard of 5 as well. We're also going to notice that we have a few other parameters. We are seeing a max dwelling units an acre. I'm going to click track. What that's doing for us is that's going to now add this to a zoning profile. That's going to be a pass-fail metric that we're looking at with inside of TestFit. But we can also see over here where it says apply. So what these are going to do for us, I'm just going to go ahead and click on all of these. Once those have been applied, they're now going to be updated in our setback area over here. So now my front, side, and rear, we have a 5-foot front setback. Our rear and our side are set by 0 per zoning code. There's going to be an additional one piece we can see, minimum lot area. What this means is that I can actually click this button over here and it shows a bit more expanded information for that zoning itself. If I click on this button, now we can start to see a bit more information that we have on here. We have, additional information about minimum lot width, if this is being divided up. The same thing, minimum lot square footages, if that's being divided up, if this larger parcel is being divided up as well. Let's say if we're not seeing all of this zoning information within these kind of standard controls that we have, we do actually provide you with a link right here. So if I were to click on this link, it would pop up in a browser window for me. It will actually show you all the zoning information that's been pulled for this area. So you can kind of go through, if you wanted to fact check it back and forth, and you have that available to look at from the website from the provider that we're using for our zoning information. So now that we've actually defined our zoning, we figured out, we're in a TOD zone. We've defined our front, side, and rear setback. We're actually going to need to apply those to the site itself. So now what we have is whenever I select an edge, we have a new window that pops up. And this is actually where we're allowing it to define what those are. So I'm going to say this is our front. Notice as I click that, this is updated to 5 feet. We'll do the same thing over here. We'll call this a side. We'll call this one a front as well, just because we're kind of on two main streets over here. we'll do a front over there as well. And we'll change this to a side and then one of these to a back for fun, or a rear, sorry. So now what we have is we've defined all of those setbacks from the zoning. We've now applied those characteristics to the site itself. So now if we kind of, and I'm gonna just tone off our background image for right now. So now we can actually see we have we have two frontages over here. This one, I'm actually just gonna change it back to a side. So now it's gone back to our 0 setback because that is required. You still have the ability to change that as needed. So I'm just left clicking and dragging on that setback. If you want to, you could also click on that setback itself and type in a specific number, because maybe you just wanted to hold off for a certain distance for maybe a design reason, or you're trying to, manipulate the site a bit more. We give you that option. We also let you click this M button, which resets it back to that default value that we've set over here on that left side. Cool.
Awesome. Is that someone asked a good question in the Q&A. I'm providing a link in the chat right now. A coverage map for zoning can be seen there. So it's the US, Canada, and Australia right now. It does not include all municipalities. I think a general rule that Zonomics has is, or a goal they were going for was every city above 50,000 people or so. So if you're looking at a 7,000 person rural town, you may have difficulty getting zoning data there.
But another thing that they included with us as well is, let's say we don't have any zoning information provided. So if I were to, let's say, select back to this garden site, since we do have zoning information, we're seeing this information pop up. But if there is no zoning information available, we actually do have a request zoning information for that. What that does is that'll send this location to our provider that we have. It'll take them as a I'm not going to quote a number right now, but let's say, within a week, I quoted a number. Within a week, we should at least get some information back from you, which we'll get an update for, and we would let you know as well once that happens. So if there is no zoning information available, you can request it, give them a little bit of time. They'll kind of scrape the data for that as much as possible. And then we'll get an update, which will just pop up live. It doesn't require an update from TestFit side. It'll just automatically show up once it is available for you.
Great point. Thank you, Kendall.
Yeah. So the next thing that we wanted to go into is the custom garden buildings. So these garden buildings that we have right now, these are ones that we've kind of created in TestFit. These are our default garden buildings. You also notice that we're getting all of this information in 3D as well as the 2D pieces that we're seeing. But let's say you have a more complex garden building. This garden building, very straightforward, not interlocking units, simple stacked units per floor. But if we wanted to update that with a more complex building, we've actually added what we call our custom garden buildings. What that does for us, so I'm going to select our garden database itself. I'm going to click edit database. So we can see these are the ones that it's pulling for this. The newest one that we've added is going to be over here on this left side. What this lets us do is I'm going to select that building. Now we can see we have this rough dimension that we have over here for our garden database. And I'm going to select and add a background image. Oh, it might not show that because it was a pop-up. I'm going to click open. Now that
we saw it.
Okay, awesome. Now that we have it open, I'm going to select the dimension that I know this is. Let's say, 130 feet or so. And then now it's bringing this in as a scale. So you're going to be scaling it off of a reference line. And now I've brought that image in. I'm going to now change this one over here. Say 6. It's actually 129 feet and 6 inches, which we can actually just designate by doing 129 space 6 and hit enter. And then now we've scaled this to the size that we want. We'll do the same thing for the kind of north and south direction. We're looking at about 59 feet on that side. And then now we're kind of placing that inside of here. So what this does is this gives you the flexibility to add an image. And with that image, we're setting the kind of bounding areas for that. We can change the floor areas, the stalls required. And then what we can also do is we can start to add different unit types over here. So I'm going to call this my, let's just say A1. We'll call this my B2. Sorry, B1, B2. We'll make this our S1. So now we can designate the different styles of units that are being placed in here. And this is all for a prototypical building. So this would be information that would be kind of, available as you're kind of working through these. And then what we're going to do is we're going to update these as needed. We're updating our beds, our baths, and then the size of these areas that we have on here. And just to kind of quickly show that, I'm going to select, we already have a a default database of this that has all this information filled in for this unit that we're using here. So now that we've created and imported that background image, applied that data plus the separate unit categories that we have, when I go back to my site over here, now we're going to see that site being solved with that new data that we've added to that custom garden building. And we're also seeing all the tabulations start to show up for there. It looks like it needs a bit more parking, but with inside of TestFit, we can just quickly kind of select these roads as needed. I can draw more parking as I want to, and we're seeing that start to kind of update and start to remove those buildings, wherever we need those. I'm just going to undo those for right now. Yeah. Nat, any questions kind of coming through about custom garden buildings or anything we've just been talking about?
Yeah, so one person was asking about the images. So you can bring in any image that you want as an underlay inside of that rectangle. So whether it's a floor plan or like a site plan rendering or something like that, you bring that in, scale it to the right size, and it will work with that. I also think one of the screens we missed was the actual scaling of the photo, because that's a pop-up. That is just allows you to scale that photo to, or that image to whatever you want.
Yeah, and the way that we scale that one is through a reference line. So what you didn't see me doing is I basically selected from edge to edge. I knew the dimension of that one, and so I just typed in 130 feet, and then it brought that image in, referencing from that scaled line that I've defined.
Yeah. All right, let's keep moving because we have a lot to go through still.
Yeah,
Let's go straight into parking. So our parking algorithm has always been very strong. We wanted to improve a few things in terms of efficiency and allowing customization of it. So we allowed now allow single loaded stalls and manual mode. So Kendall, you want to show those off?
absolutely. So we have parking right here, and I'll kind of just quickly go through this one. As we move this around, we're going to start to see a bit more single loaded stalls solving for us by default. So as I move this around, we're going to start to see those kind of populate a bit. And if we needed to, we can actually go in and we can start to change the load of that drive as well. So let's say over here on this kind of south point that we've defined over here, if I wanted to, maybe I don't want this area over here to have parking for whatever that reason may be. I can right click on that node now. I can either click unload, that's removed all parking from both sides, or I can right click on there and I can make it single loaded. Right now, I'll flip that back over. And so now it gives us a bit more flexibility. I can start to push that over where that area is. And around this space, we also have a void space being shown. But you can see now we can control a bit more detail of how we're drawing that, as well as manually start to define some of these roads. So but what I mean by manually defining it, and I'll just kind of remove that single loaded element that we've drawn. Let's say, and I'm just going to delete this retail entirely for right now. We'll click schemes, we'll create an additional one, hit save, and then I'm going to remove this, or just kind of move this over. We have a max run that we've added as well for parking, so we can go a certain distance, start to add these additional drives. Maybe for some reason I want to go over here, select this drive aisle, which is just clicking inside of it, and maybe I want to draw a drive going all the way out like this. So you can see now I've manually defined that parking area, and we're pulling that drive all the way out to this outside right here. So it gives you a bit more flexibility whenever you are drawing and defining this, and you can start to kind of customize what it looks like. And for some reason, if I wanted to draw a big, nice angular stall going through here, or drive aisle going through here, you can see we're kind of quickly cutting through all of that as needed. And now we're seeing that updated, in real time as we make these changes.
And someone in the Q&A asked about entries. So we will be able to add entries into surface lots like this very soon. We're working right now on improving our consistency between different configurators. So we have that in high density right now. That's getting brought over into the configurator potentially within a short time. So yeah, some great stuff with desktop updates. We have a few UI UX things that we want to talk about and show. And let me just share this real quick, and then we'll get right back into Kendall's. So what we wanted to do, we wanted it to make it TestFit easier to view. We wanted to make it easier to document, easier to learn, easier to find potential solves, and easier to navigate. So that's what those are the things we wanted to do, and these were the solutions to these things. So Kendall, if you want to
Absolutely.
rip through some of these, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. And so let me go ahead and just share this one again. And so a couple things that we've added. So now we have the ability to we have a visibility layer. This gives you the option to tone down the site plan as needed. Maybe you're looking at an underlay, you need to know where a heritage tree is, or maybe some easements that you have for that imported background image. So now we can kind of quickly tone this down as we're kind of looking at over here. Sometimes as well, let's say we're working on this garden site. This might not be we might not be using true north itself to define, or as we're working on this project itself. So now what we can do is this kind of lower side over here, I can left click, and that's actually going to rotate that view that we're looking at. But what we can also do is if I right click over here, I can set my project north. So let's say for this project, I want this to be the kind of lower portion. I'm going to click and define that. Now it's rotated my whole screen, and this is my new project north. We still retain the information for true north versus project, and I can just kind of simply click on each of those icons, and I can swap between the different ones that we're seeing over here. So that lets you kind of get more accustomed to using maybe more accustomed to the kind of way you're used to viewing it. And that's kind of letting you see that right now. The other thing that we added is we added some additional tool tips as well. So if I start to hover over some of this information, we can see parking ratio, net rentable square footages. We're giving you a bit of the formulas in that background that's starting to show where this information is coming from. So that works for kind of a lot of these. We're going to be getting just a bit more information that we're seeing to kind of help clarify what these numbers are. Another big thing that we added is, of course, this new UI that we're using. So right now, this is going to be a big difference from what we've had previously. We did have a plus button before, which kind of had all of the elements that you would use to add additional information to that site. We've taken that out, and we've actually created all of these over here on this left side. So this is where we'll be able to define by a site, draw it, defined by parcels, draw a site, or just the fun, meets and bounds that you have, as well as some other kind of things that we'll see inside of here. So let's say I select the site, I can add additional regions from here, I can add spaces, I can add parking, draw the roads that we use from the initial piece, or even draw easements, just to kind of show what that easement is. An easement's essentially a no build zone that we have inside of TestFit. So as that kind of build zone moves around, now we're not placing any parking inside of that easement that's being shown right there, as well as some additional things such as trees and changing levels and whatnot. This right side we've updated as well to kind of have additional map information showing the layers, the visibilities, and swapping between your different background maps that you have, as well as that 3D button that's kind of populating for us. I'll turn on some context to see kind of some of the available Salt Lake City context. On top of that, we've redesigned our kind of nav tree as well. You'll see there's some additional information that we have. We can select different presets that we have over here on this left side, ranging from industrial all the way to high density and low density, let's say like townhome products, and start to see some of these kind of color swaths that we're seeing that will reflect inside of that page. So for this multifamily building, we can start to quickly identify what these things are. What is the yellow piece, multifamily, kind of so on with these other elements that we're looking at over here. The last thing that we've included with our new, let's say our new, some of our user-facing features is this idea of a hover preview. So let's say I'm defining a site and I don't know what fits on my site. But what I can do is let's say our high density solver. Now, if I hover over these, I can see a quick preview of each of these. I'm actually going to move up to another floor. Let's go up to a different floor so we can start to see some of these pop up for us. That's okay. So as I hover over these, I can see what would fit. So, I can hover over these townhomes. I can start to see different elements. Let's say if something's too big or too small to fit on there, we'll get an error to show that. And just because, industrial is going to be a much larger one, I can see that with this smaller site, the only industrial pieces that are going to be fitting would be this kind of prototypical smaller building and this urban infill that we're showing over here. So this allows you to kind of, let's say if we wanted to, what fits on the site, we can quickly kind of just move our mouse up and down. I'm not clicking or selecting anything, but I could click on here and now I can see there's a wrap product that fits inside of here and, kind of continue on with exploring the site by just using that hover preview to know what does and doesn't fit with a quick response of seeing that kind of live update.
Yeah, and this is incredible stuff. And one of the really exciting things we're going to be releasing in the next few weeks is our deal pipeline experience, which is bringing TestFit into the web. So if you just saw, Kendall just clicked a button up there that says copy link. He's going to send me this link for this deal and I'll kind of show the web experience from there.
There we go. You should have it.
Cool. All right.
Oh, stop sharing.
All good. Uh, all right. Oops. Got to share my screen. Okay. So what we've now done is we are now viewing this in the web. Anything that Kendall has saved here, we are now viewing. You can see the tabulation down below. You can see a 3D view of it. You can rotate, see context, change to satellite view. Whole bunch of really fantastic stuff. It makes it really easy to share files within your own organization. I'll talk a little bit more about external sharing that we're working on, but we're all very excited about this. So you can now view this in the web. Another incredible thing that we
I would
have.
actually also like to mention
Yep.
the ability to cycle through those schemes. So as we were working through this, I was creating multiple schemes, and so now what we can see is there's just that side A on the bottom, which was that kind of retail and multifamily piece. As we start to cycle through those schemes, we can see how that kind of has progressed to our different options. So if you wanted to look at kind of multiple schemes within that file, you can now kind of send this to someone within your organization. They can take a look at it and they can cycle through the different schemes as needed to see kind of how things have progressed or changed with the different options that you've provided.
Great. Yeah, great point. Another thing we've created is a deal map. This is your place for all of your deals. If you save anything inside TestFit on the web, you now get this map view. You can zoom in. Let's check some of these out. You can hover over them, see the thumbnails and names of them, and then you can open them up straight from that map. Great high-level view of your entire pipeline very quickly. We're doing a lot of work around this with deal status as well, so you'll be able to tag whether it's active, lost, won, an existing building, anything like that.
And also with this, you'll be able to save your kind of company presets or databases that you've created. So if you have those custom units that you use all the time, or that kind of custom garden database that we just created as well, that can be saved. You can see we have an assets folder shown over there on the top. And within that folder itself, we can start to save these different pieces to be used within your same organization.
Exactly. And you'll be able to see high-level metadata soon as well. So that is our deal pipeline experience. Give me one sec as I work through these different windows that I have up. We will be releasing this. It's in beta right now. If you're an existing customer, you can get into that beta. Feel free to reach out to your account manager. In the next coming weeks, we will be releasing this to all our users as part of our existing TestFit experience at no extra cost. So we are incredibly excited about that. I know we've been keeping up with the Q&A and chat, but I'll leave a quick second just to see if there's any other questions before we move on to what's next. I need to pull up the Q&A. There we go. Wow, we just answered that. Does TestFit have plans to become cloud-based? Yeah, in the next few weeks, we'll be using we will have a web product. Is it on the roadmap to be added? I'm not totally sure what that means. And let's see, when doing podium with parking underneath, how can we move the amenity to the lower parking lot? Do you know the answer to that, Kendall?
Yeah, I do. So if we're working inside of the kind of, and I can share as well if we needed to. But if we're working with inside of TestFit itself, we would just make sure that we have that space added to the garage itself, instead of showing it on that upper podium. So this will be kind of our full planner as well. So I could change this to a podium. You know, right now we do have that amenity space over here that can be kind of quickly moved to this garage level. If we did want to keep that, but add an additional one to this lower garage level, I'll go down here to our garage. We can see our kind of multiple parking stalls, including compacts and ADAs. But I'm going to select that garage. I'm going to add a space. And now that space has been added over here. Once that space has kind of been added, we can select it. We can move that around. Let's say over here, we'll do the same thing that we were doing on the other side. I'll change that to retail. I can kind of start to see that in 3D. And then that retail can become that same kind of double height space as needed that we were looking at for that previous one. I'll edit my shadows so we can see this a bit more. Perfect. Yeah, so we can add that space as needed just by selecting the garage. Then we're going to add whatever we want to show inside of there.
Someone in the chat or Q&A brought up the idea of a healthcare planner. I would say check out Urban Planner. It's a great massing tool for that kind of work. And please give us any feedback on kind of healthcare specific things. We're driven by, or our roadmap is driven by customer feedback. So if you come in and say, hey, this will be incredibly valuable for me, we can take a look at it and potentially work on it.
Yeah, and to answer one of the other questions that we have on there, we do offer trainings that we have, but as well as trainings, we do have a help section over here in knowledge base. This takes us to our website. You can actually search keywords if you needed to. So you can type in multifamily. You can find articles that help you towards multifamily. If you need to find out how to make, custom shaped units or start to define these stalls, or how do I manually add a drive coming out of my garage, kind of like what I just did right now, all that's going to be available through the help knowledge base article. And then you can kind of quickly go in and learn how do I manually define some of these edges. As you can see, I'm just kind of pushing and pulling and manipulating what we're seeing kind of here in that space. But also feel free to reach out to us as needed. But really the knowledge base is going to have a ton of information for you to kind of search and kind of learn at your own pace as you'd like.
Awesome. I think we want to get into the what's next, because I think this is some of the most exciting stuff to show. Not that the stuff that we have built so far is very exciting, and we are incredibly excited for this new stuff. So
yeah,
let me pull that up. So let's see. All right, everyone can see that. So first off, we are releasing version 4.9 within the next 24 hours. This will include parking improvements to the algorithm, as well as bringing all the different features to all the parking configurators. So before we only had ADA stalls or multi-size stalls in high density. We're now bringing that into surface lots and everything else. There's a lot of other great improvements in there, so look out for that in the next 24 hours. People have been talking about our low density in the chat a little bit. We are definitely working on improving this. On the left, you can see kind of the issues we had with some of our road layouts. As soon as you put something in the middle of it, it created a lot of extra roads. We're cleaning that up. We're looking to add alleyways. There's a lot of good improvements between townhomes, gardens, urban subdivisions that we're looking into, or that we're actively working on. Something very, very exciting is cut and fill. So I think everyone can understand how wildly different cut and fill can vary per project. It can be the most unexpected cost of a project. And this is a quick prototype that we put together, but we are automatically calculating cut and fill as soon as you place that site based off of 3D topo that we get from a data provider. That means you can get your cut, fill, import, and export volume and cost as soon as you select the site. We're really excited about this. This will be kind of in the next few months that you'll see more of this, and we're really excited. Lastly, generative design, what we're calling TestFit generative design. Right now in TestFit, the experience can be a bit slow and you have to kind of work through it. So you select a site and you click on a preset, or you hover over preset now, which is a little bit better. And you see, okay, maybe that townhome variation could work, or let me look at this other townhome variation. And it's one by one, you kind of go through and find, okay, this is the right thing to hit my goals for the project. What we're looking to do with generative design is run a couple hundred solves in the background, varying different things to get you that best solve. So you'll select a goal, like you want you want a site between 150 and 175 units. You want it on this site, on this specific site, and you want to have the highest FAR, or highest dwelling units per acre. We'll run a whole bunch of solves in the background in a few seconds, present you with a list of different options, and allow you to then go into our normal editing experience in TestFit. So we're incredibly excited about this, and it's going to be very, very powerful in the future. So that's everything that we have today. Thank you everyone for joining. Again, this recording will be sent out to those that registered and showed up. Thank you for the amazing questions, and have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.